Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our podcast. Through this series, we aim to open up the conversation about getting into teaching, discussing the different journeys into teaching and the life of newly qualified and trainee teachers in the industry. Whether you are interested in teaching, are a newly qualified teacher yourself, or are just simply interested in the life of newly qualified or trainee teachers in the industry, we hope you enjoy the episode. In this episode, we will be speaking to Eleanor, who is currently completing an integrated master's in education with QTS. So, Eleanor, thank you for joining us today.
No problem.
How are you?
Very good. I'm feeling, pretty good. Say it's a nice rainy day outside, so
Yeah.
I'm just glad I'm inside now and we're here.
Yeah, it is. It is a horrible rainy day, isn't it? I'm
is.
so ready for some sunshine
Oh
again.
yeah, summer.
Yeah,
Summer.
yeah,
Winter's
I need
over
summer.
now. Summer.
It's when it gets to springtime. I've heard a lot of people say that's the real New Year's.
Oh yeah,
'Cause it's
it's fresh. It's getting warm, isn't
Yeah.
it? We're on the way up to the hot sun, and then we'll all complain when it's sunny. And we'll
When we're too hot.
Yeah.
But I love it when everything starts to bloom and stuff. I feel like it does kind of make sense for that to be
It
New
does.
Year.
I don't
really,
know why
doesn't
we have it in January. Maybe someone can tell us
Yeah.
why. We
Yeah.
start it when it starts spring. We'll start January then.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that makes the most
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, so if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, what you're up to at the moment.
Of course. So I'm currently studying, as you've already said, integrated masters in education.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my 4th year at the University of Derby. So instead of, working my way up to a QTS, I've already completed the QTS side. My final year is about leadership. So understanding how schools run, expanding my own kind of autonomy on how I do things within school, how leadership runs, and also how to be a successful leader. But then in my spare time, I'm a performer, so I'm part of the Musical Theatre Society.
Amazing.
I do all that kind of aspect. I help out in the local community. I'm basically just, take that time for myself too. I'm very much a self-care girly, so yeah, that's my roundup of what I'm doing really at the minute.
Oh, I love that. And that's so fun that you're doing musical theatre and all that sort of thing. Have you done that for a long time?
Yeah, so I've performed since I remember, and I originally just did dance, and then I had to choose, unfortunately, between dance or singing because they fell on the same day. And I just thought, why not try a bit of singing? And then from that, I kind of progressed. I've actually done some professional work.
Amazing.
I was in the UK tour of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang when I was younger, not
That's
recently.
So cool.
Yeah, when I was 12. So from that, I found this kind of love, but then I realised, actually, is this something I really want to do? Long term, am I going to make a career out of it? And I thought, you know what? I love teaching. And then one day I just told myself, I really want to be a teacher. And my parents said to me, you can change your mind if you want. And, here I am. Here I am still. So, yeah, I have performed since I remember, but it's still in my heart.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also, you never know. You could always go back to that.
You never know.
A
couple of years' time, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's really nice to kind of go from doing any kind of drama or musical theatre or anything like that. Kind of makes sense to go into something like teaching because you have a bit of that built-in confidence, from performing.
Because the skills just run over into it. The performance, what a child's not going to turn down a good dance, so it does give me skills and also that mindset within music and performing arts that does make me stand out compared to a lot of people. I know a lot of teachers that are like, oh my goodness, music, and I'm like, please give it to me. I will do it. So yeah, it's a good skill crossover.
Yeah, definitely really good transferable skills, and I suppose know how to kind of get everyone going with the lessons, get everyone excited.
Yeah.
I think that's lovely. Okay, that's really interesting. So you said you are obviously studying in Derby at the moment.
I am.
So how are you enjoying living there? Are you getting on well?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine a life without Derby, as weird as that sounds, because I'm originally from Doncaster. So moving as an only child and with nobody around me who's had that experience moving and living in Derby, it was quite a scary step. I was going through a lot at the time, a lot of big changes. And, from the moment I got there, weirdly, I was so settled. I think the life away and making my own life for myself has been something that has been great. I mean, Derby, as much as it's quite small, it's kind of like a all-in-one package. So, you know, you've got your shops, you've got your entertainment, you've got the social life. The university is, you know, from the town centre, a 15-minute walk, 20 minutes at the max. My house is like 10, 15 minutes from it. So it's brilliant. And, you know, as much as I move into Manchester next year, you know, after my degree, you know, I will miss Derby weirdly. It's just given me so many memories there and just everything I need to develop into someone who I wouldn't have ever believed I would become, just the confidence within that and just being my own person. So yeah, I am currently there and it's doing its job. It's doing its job well, but, you know, time will tell how I do in Manchester as well.
I'm sure you'll love Manchester. I suppose that's quite a big difference, isn't it? Because you're kind of going into a bigger city. Is Derby kind of more of a like town sort of area? Like, does it give that kind of vibe?
It's definitely, you know, a lot smaller than Manchester. I think it's quite easy to pick up what things are. I remember the first time, it's like a maze, but it's just having the familiarity to be able to just, you know, walk knowing where everything is, everything you need in such a small walking distance. I think for students that might be quite nervous about moving somewhere or don't know what it's going to hold or if it's going to be too big, or even neurodivergent students, because I'm neurodivergent. So for that, having kind of like a smaller place, but also giving you that university experience, it's definitely somewhere that's accessible and, you know, gives you that life away from home if you do move.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I suppose, yeah, somewhere that's a little bit less overwhelming because you're already having all the changes of like moving away from home, starting somewhere new, making new friends and everything. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I found that as well when I like lived. So I went to university in Bristol, which was only actually like an hour away from my home. And I loved that because I could just like pop back home if I wanted to, like on the weekend or something. If I was feeling a bit like homesick or just needed like, I don't know, a bit of comfort or something. It's nice to be not too far.
I don't know if you ever did like a surprise weekend home. I did that, I think. When was it, like 2 years ago? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And it was so nice because I just got the train. It wasn't even that long. And I surprised my family. And, you know, they're both just retired and they're just chill at home. And it's just so nice to be able to pop home and be able to do things like that. But also have the uni life too. Yeah. I think, you know, some people, you know, will stay at home and that's okay because that's what they'd like. But there's just something about that university life and being at university, especially hand in hand with getting your degree. It just kind of, it grows you so much as a person. So it's basically good that I can also go home and have my life with my family, but come and have my own life too and my own identity.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice to have like an experience outside of your family home, isn't it? And stuff like that sometimes. So have you felt like you've made like some good friends there and things like that?
Yeah, I couldn't preach my friends anymore. I was very lucky because sometimes people worry about who they're going to be placed with in accommodation. Yeah. But we all had a Facebook group together before we even moved. I was a little bit nervous, you know, about moving in because I'm diagnosed ADHD. I was only diagnosed a couple of months before uni, so obviously there was nerves around how are people going to feel about that? Is it all going to be okay? But the people that I lived with in my first year were just fantastic, so understanding. We went to everything together. They were just so understanding of my needs and what I needed. And even to this day, I have a friend that I lived with in my first year, and I'm still friends with her now. And it's just beautiful because we've both become, you know, two different people and we've matured so much, but we kind of look back at our first year and just think how much we've grown. So I've made, you know, a variety of friends from just like who I live with in accommodation to musical theatre society, and like even just getting involved in things. I think that would be my tip is, you know, don't be afraid to do things outside of university life. So, you know, I got myself involved in the Saturday National Club, which is basically like a youth programme that goes on for, I think it's 13 to 18-year-olds looking at societal change. And I just saw it and I thought I could just be a volunteer for that, and I just did that on my own accord on a Saturday, and it ended up in me being able to travel to London with them to go and get really an award. Cool. And I think that in itself, you know, I've made so many friends from all these different things, and I couldn't be more grateful for my friends. So they're just amazing people.
That's amazing. It's so nice that you've like pushed yourself out of your comfort zone. You know, you've done stuff that's, you know, different to what you usually would have done. I think that is the way of like making more friends and stuff, isn't it? When you go into a new place, because, you know, it can be quite hard, can't it, to make new friends, but especially if you've been lucky enough to have people that are great in your accommodation as well. That's really good. So are you still living with the same people or some of the same people?
Well, unfortunately, because of my 4th year, a lot of my friends kind of moved on into their own degrees and did their own things. But, you know, for basically all of the 3 years, I live with the same people. So, you know, for the big majority of that chunk. But the people that I live with now, I live with 2 other girls. I met them through MT. So
amazing.
Yeah, so as much as I still keep in contact with them and I'll go and see them and see how their, you know, degrees are going and ask for their advice about how they're doing in their schools. You know, I miss them a lot, but I am now in a rented house, a student house. Just brilliant. It's like living at home because, you know, you don't have like the, you know, the communal kitchens. It's like a house really. You get your TV, you get your lounge, you get everything.
Yeah.
So it feels very homely, and it's, you know, it makes just living by yourself or with friends, you know, away from family, like even more enjoyable and more comforting too.
Yeah, no, that's nice. So with your previous years, were you kind of in more student accommodation sort of thing rather than in house shares?
So I was pretty quick with getting into like housing. So my first year was student accommodation. That's something that I, you know, would never not recommend, because I think that going into student accommodation on your first year is just so important, because, you know, you kind of have a little bit more support. So you have the people in the office if there's any maintenance issues, or, you know, you've got a lot more people around you. So it just gives you that little bit of scaffolding. You know, you think, oh, actually, I'm not sure what to do. I just need a bit of support. But then I think within the first couple of months of living in accommodation, people already question, oh, actually, next year, should we all go and live together? And I was like, I think I'm ready. I was like, the people around me made me feel so supported that I didn't question it.
Yeah, that's so nice.
I think how moving within housing is quite a daunting experience, because it's like, okay, so we're actually going to have to go and find our own place and make sure that we can afford it. But, you know, the universities and even like online forums and groups, they'll support you with that a lot. And that's what they did with me. And they made, you know, I'd ask questions that might seem really silly, but it's better just to check. So, you know, within my second year, we were already moving into a house, which was
nice.
Great. And I haven't gone back, and I'm just now nice and calm in a house.
Yeah, that's so nice. And how are you finding your 4th year? Are you finding it quite intense, or is it
weirdly quite emotional, because it's, you know, it's still very important, and it's kind of the year where we kind of fly the nest a little bit. But yeah, it's quite emotional, because in the first 3 years, you know, there's a lot more structure within. It's very clever how they do it at the University of Derby. They really kind of model it in the first, you know, year or two. And then it's interesting now when looking back, they kind of slowly, you know, push you out the nest in a safe way. So then when we got to our 4th year, they were like, right, so you're going to be in these days, and then these days you're basically going to, you know, quote, fly, and you're going to go and do your thing and go out to the schools. And, you know, as a cohort, I think we were all like, oh, this is it now. So like this, as much as we are in uni and we're still learning, it's really much us coming back to the uni and saying what we have done with our time, and basically looking at the achievements we've done and how we've progressed as leaders. So, you know, even on like the first couple of weeks of my 4th year, I was already thinking, oh gosh, I was like, this is like now my final year, like the final time going to Freshers Week. And, you know, I still love it in my 4th year. I'm going to all them Freshers events. I love it.
It's good that they put all of that stuff on though, isn't it, really?
It's just brilliant. And, you know, you get a lot of the free things and get to have a look around. And even just things like that is, I was on the, as a side thing, I was on the committee for the MT Society, and we've run at the Freshers event, and, you know, we kind of passed the baton on to other members, and I'm just another member this year. But even just seeing that, I was like, oh, that was me last year, and now I'm just on my last year, and this is the final time. So yeah, it's just emotional, but I'm proud as well. I really thought I'd find it quite challenging, but I just think that the way that they've done it, and the way that I personally progressed anyway, I feel so safe and structured. It's like I'm not at all stressed. I'm just very grateful and emotional.
And how have you found it, kind of having ADHD and finding out that you had it so close to kind of moving to university? How did you kind of find that process with getting into your education course?
I think it was daunting because, you know, with honesty, there is a lot of stigma around, you know, ADHD, how they might present themselves. I'd been having, you know, some kind of queries, you know, I had a lot of support in place just for academics and, you know, just checking in. And I remember thinking something isn't quite right. You know, I was always trying really hard, but I just kind of never hit the point. And, you know, when I got my diagnosis, it was much as it was a big sigh of relief because I knew that I'd be getting the support. You know, all them thoughts come into your head thinking, oh, but, you know, people think that ADHD people cannot focus, they cannot, you know, regulate properly. They basically can't do what other people do. So even just with that, I think I actually got my diagnosis, much as it was a couple of months before uni. It was actually, I think, about 3 weeks before my A levels. So that in itself, we kind of had to rush to get support, and that, and in a way, I was like, oh, well, I feel like I'm letting my life down because now I'm not going to be able to achieve what other people achieve because now I'm labelled as it. But then it's taken a long time. But because of the support of the university and just being honest about it and showing that actually, yeah, I've got it, but I'm just as capable. And, you know, here I am now. And, you know, it was scary at first, but I just kind of told myself, you've just got to be yourself and you've got to be honest about your boundaries. It's not always easy. I have my days where, you know, I have to be honest and say, I'm really struggling with this today.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't even really think about, you know, the struggles of it now. It's just kind of norm to me, how I do and how I process. But yeah, I think that kind of answers it as an overall. It was scary at first. I had to do a lot of emailing back and forth, you know, to get the things in place. But I have a brilliant mentor at uni now for my ADHD and I have everything in place. And I think because I was just honest, that made it a lot easier. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And don't, you know, my thing really to people is just don't be, you know, ashamed of it. Don't look at what people think it is. Just know that, you know, if you have got it, you've got it, and that's okay. And it brings out so much good. Don't, like, you know, let the labels that are perceived by society, you know, shape how you should be.
Yeah, no, I think that's really lovely. And also, you know, it's so good that your university were, you know, helped you so much and were so understanding and kind of gave you that help that you needed and the support and everything like that. Because I think, like you said, it's quite daunting going in just off of that diagnosis, you know. That can be really difficult to kind of be like, oh, well, now I've got this other label for myself that I've kind of got, like, are people going to think of me in a certain way? But that's so good that you've like come to terms with things and like understand how you learn and all those sorts of things. I think it's really good. And also how amazing that you kind of got through the whole of like secondary school and stuff like that without even knowing that.
You know,
like,
what?
You know?
It's part of a reason why, you know, I'm so passionate about teaching and, you know, focusing on every single child, no matter how small or big the problem is I think that there was a lot more signs than I realised. There was a lot of times where I'd had to go out of my class and take a breather. And I just remember I was in such a, not a state, but I was clearly so, you know, unfocused and I couldn't just kind of ground myself. And I just remember most of the time the teachers would say, have you eaten breakfast this morning? Have you slept properly? I go, yes. And nobody kind of, and I can't believe it looking back now, I kind of shocked that nobody picked up on it. People would know that there was, you know, well, Eleanor's, you know, this has happened today, she's done this, that, the other. But nobody would actually go, yeah, but why? What's gone on? And I think that's part of the reason why, you know, teaching for me is so important and being, you know, picking up on things, even if it's really small, because that could lead to something. So yeah, it kind of is surprising because academically, I was pretty much on board. I was getting everything I needed. I was a prefect. You know, I was doing everything within the school, but there were signs that stuff wasn't completely right for me. I would kind of go into school, mask, and then I'd obviously have my moments, and then I'd come back from school, and that's when it'd be like the you know, that'd be it, and I would struggle. But yeah, basically, it does shock me, but also I'm a bit like, I can see the signs now looking back, but nobody followed it up.
Yeah, and I suppose for you, why would you think anything different? Because you've always kind of been like that.
It was norm. Yeah,
you
it
know,
was.
so you can kind of see why you wouldn't have picked up on that and things. But I suppose, yeah, for like your teachers and things like that, like I completely understand why you would want to be, you know, looking more into kind of how you can kind of help people that might have those like challenges in life or might face those kind of things, because I think that can be really difficult when you're kind of maybe not able to focus in that kind of way. You kind of need the extra support from people to, you know, understand that.
And I think that part of it, what I see anyway within teachers, and I think even teachers looking back, is, you know, the dismissal of it, as much as it can be hard because teachers have, you know, such an important job within shaping lives. I think as much as there's so much out there to be like, oh, well, you can try this. Sometimes what someone needs who might be neurodivergent or might be even struggling with things at home or just in school or anything really is just to listen, because I think that can say so much more than trying to solve the issue by, you know, going, have you eaten? Have you done this? Okay, you're fine. Even just, you know, being able to talk with that person, say, do you know what's caused this? Or how are you feeling? Can actually open up so much more. And I think if, you know, teachers in my past might have just sat down, and it probably would have been, you know, so much easier for them too to just sit down and say, talk to me, what's going on? And for me to be able to speak openly instead of kind of being dismissed with it, going, well, academically you're doing fine, go back to class. It would have made it a lot easier. And that's something that I think in my own teaching practice, if a child needs to chat, I'll chat, you know, and that in itself, you know, without disclosing anything, has led to so much that children have needed in my experiences. And I've gone, well, it's just because I spoke to them, I built a relationship with them, and that's so much more than trying to just cover the issue itself.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think that's great that you've kind of taken that from your experience as well.
Yeah.
Like that's not, you've turned that into such a positive, you know, and that you can kind of really be there for kids that might have the same, you know, and face the same challenges as you did, because that could be really difficult if your teachers aren't completely understanding the situation, aren't understanding maybe how you learn properly, whereas you'll kind of go into teaching having that in your mind already.
Yeah.
You know, of like, be more aware of that and maybe talk to the students a little bit more if they seem like they're struggling a bit more, rather than kind of asking the same questions as your teachers did, like kind of opening up those bigger conversations.
Yeah, I had a really lovely conversation actually with one of my lecturers, and she made a really good point. And she said, I think the neurodivergent people, they've been you kind of are so used to self-checking yourself, checking for things, that is a, you know, a really positive trait in you, that when you go into schools, you'll be able in a way to identify how the children are, because you're so used to how their bodies react or how they might react to things. So that in itself, that's going to help you with the children, because as much as it is important to listen to what that child's communicating, I think it's just as important to kind of notice the signs. And like I say, I don't feel like, especially in my time, even with other people, that wasn't picked up on. So I definitely use that in my teaching practices, really building that relationship, because when you know something's off with that child, that speaks more volume, and I use that in itself as a strength to just, you know, question it and listen and get to the bottom of it. And the change in the children when you just listen to them and give them that space, you know, they just become so much more comfortable in the classroom. And it's so beautiful to see that openness, because I just want the children in my class, and when I'm, you know, on a placement or working with a group, is for them just to be themselves, and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, that's so nice. And that's such an amazing thing that you've kind of learned and taken on from doing your work and your placements and things like that. So how have you found your placements so far? Have you done lots of different ones at different schools? How did that kind of work within your course?
I've basically done one every year, so I'm technically on my fourth one that I'm starting. Well, I did a couple of weeks back in November, but we have a break, which is what's nice about the course, is you go into the placement and then you come back out of it just for a couple of weeks, then you go back. So I'm currently on my fourth one, and it's, you know, again, it's actually, as much as it's challenging because you're having to learn on the go, it's just the most rewarding experience just working with the children. I think, you know, as much as I've always loved working with children, there's something about when you're teaching and you're leading that class and you kind of see their eyes light up when you know, you give them that positive praise, or you give them that space to be able to talk or share their ideas. I've just really enjoyed the challenge, and also using my own kind of areas of strength and skills within the classroom. So, I mean, for example, you know, with my music, I very much from the beginning, which I think is a top tip for teachers, is, you know, bring out the skills that you have, because some schools will, you know, they would, you know, in a way die for someone to have that in their classroom. So just be honest with your skills and say, I can do this, which is what I did in a lot of my placements. I kind of bring my music, but also my neurodivergency into it. And just being able to bring my own identity into it and work with the children, I think has been one of the biggest pieces of enjoyment that I've had. I play the flute, so I've brought my flute in from time to time.
Amazing.
And yeah, so basically I've just really enjoyed getting to know the children and building that and seeing their progression, but also just doing what as well I enjoy and seeing them enjoy it too.
And also just like how lovely to bring in a skill that you really enjoy doing, like playing the flute or something. I feel like kids would be like, wow, that's amazing.
Honestly, it's like they've never seen it. They probably, some of them haven't though, because, you know, a lot of different backgrounds. So being able to just, and I think it was my first placement, it felt so silly, which is why, you know, it sounds silly, but at first I said to my teacher, oh yeah, I play the flute, and she kind of whipped her head around and went, bring it in. And I was like, pardon? She was like, bring it in. And I was like, well, am I allowed? She went, yes. She was like, because we need that variety. We don't just want to teach, we want them to experience life. So if that means you bring in your flute, or you know, get a video of you, you know, when you were their age singing, that in itself is going to teach them just as much as learning, you know, in a group lesson. So yeah, and it kind of just started from there. And I thought, you know what, I will then. And it's now seems to be a pattern every placement I go to. I think the first conversation I have is, I have a flute, by the way. Like, please let me bring it in. And yeah, it's enjoyable to do it.
Also, that might be something that you bring into your teaching, you know,
you're
going to be the flute teacher.
You know, like, because they clearly had one when I was in school, because that's how I learned. So you never know. You never know.
That's amazing. I think that's so cool. I used to love it when I would go out of my lessons and I would go and learn like a bit of guitar and stuff during my lessons.
It's great. It's just a bit of a chill as well, but it just teaches you so much. I'm very much a process over product. As much as I love to display the work and I love to show off what my class has done, I just love as well teaching them the skills that they need. So even if they weren't to produce one piece of work, but then they showed me that they had grown confidence in, I don't know, the ability to speak out loud, that in itself is so much more than, you know, a beautiful piece of artwork. So it just gives you them opportunities that sometimes, you know, if a child is struggling in one thing, they might absolutely excel in another. And that for me is so much more of a quality day for me than just producing work itself.
And also quite nice to show like different strengths that you can have as well. Like you say, that one kid could be really good, you know, at maths, and one person could not be, but they're amazing at the ukulele or whatever, you know. You all kind of have your different things that you have, so that's quite nice to bring in something like you playing an instrument or something a little bit different that a child could look at and be like, oh, I really want to do that, you know, I want to have that skill, as well as all these other subjects that we could be doing but they might find a little bit more challenging. So,
and that's something that I found is probably not one of the biggest shocks, but to some degree it's something that I had to learn on placement, is that do not just look at the child's academic ability, because I've met so many children which might be really struggling with their core subjects, and you put them in PE and they, you know, will lead the group. They will absolutely excel. And that's why I think it's so important that when you get to know your children or your class, don't just ask about how they're doing. Ask about, you know, their strengths, if they're a confident talker or if they are really empathetic, because that, when you bring out that child's strength, you don't just look at how they're doing, you know, academically. It's not the be all end all. You know, they are a person and they've got skills in areas that they're good at. That's something that I learn, and I always will try my best now in class to not just say, hey, so who do I need to work with? I might say instead to my teacher or my mentor, is there anybody who's good at leading groups? Because I need that. I'm not looking for academic ability. I'm looking to bring out the best in the children. And it's just the best part of the job.
And also, like, you know, bringing out the skills that they'll use in later life. Like, you're not only going to be using your subject knowledge, you're also going to be using things like you said, like being a team leader
Oh,
or
yeah.
being able to bring out creativity in a project or something like that, maybe thinking outside the box, all those sorts of things that maybe aren't necessarily your core things, but they are core within your life as an adult.
Yeah, and the way that you will see if you bring out their strengths, the way that you kind of see them flourish into someone who is so much more confident, because children just want to be seen. If they don't feel heard or they don't feel like they're a part of the community or they can't be themselves, it's when they kind of will, like, you know, shrivel into themselves. And it's so sad to see, even if teachers just take 5 minutes of their day to say, oh Sadie, I saw that you did that beautiful piece of art. Why don't you show everyone at the end of the day? That in itself, it will stick with them for life. It sounds really small, but when you just bring out their strengths, even just for a little bit, and give them that, you know, showing it to everyone, it stays with them long term, and the way that their learning will just open up. That's what I do anyway. If I see a child which is, you know, a little bit on the quieter side or maybe struggling, I say, what are you good at and how can we show this in the class? And it just improves our learning so effectively.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, that's so true as well, because I remember experiences like when I was a kid, like when I was in primary school, I remember I had this one piece of art that I did that ended up going up in like a gallery. It was only like a little local one or something, but like my teacher really like pushed me to do that and was saying, you know, that it was really good and that like they were really happy with my work and stuff, and that stuck with me. And I was so proud to like, you know, take my parents to go and see it up somewhere, and it just like, that was so nice. And then I ended up doing like lots of art and design and stuff like in creative subjects. Yeah. So it kind of does make a difference, and especially with like maybe what they do outside of school as well, because like talking to them about stuff like that. I remember I did a lot of drama as well at school, and I loved when we did do the school shows and, you know, being a part of those, and maybe doing like the roles that maybe aren't even as big, but they're, you know, still something you can have fun with, and you can like, my teachers really pushed me in that sort of way, which I really loved. I think I was literally like a pig or something in one of our school musicals, and my teacher was like, oh, you're so like smiley and like, you know, you're like a presence on the stage, and that made me feel amazing. And I was literally in like year 4 or something, but I was like, I loved that. And then I ended up doing loads more drama outside of school as well, so that kind of pushed me in a different way. So I could kind of see how, especially kids in primary schools and stuff as well, when you're kind of just getting to grips with everything at school, aren't you? And like getting to grips with the subjects and things. If there's something that you're really passionate about, like you said, or sports or theatre or music or something like that, that's amazing to like kind of push more on that side of things, not just the academic side. I would think that's a really nice thing to have like learned from the schools. So what do you feel has been your most challenging part of student life so far? Could be stuff that's maybe in your placements or just in general.
I would probably say the responsibilities that come with, you know, living away from home and being a teacher. I think it's quite easy. I'm just going to use an example of when I would live at home. You go to school and you come back and you pretty much, you know, your mum or your dad or whoever you live with will be like, do you want some tea? And then you can have a bit of chill for a bit. You can go, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. Can I do it tomorrow? And some degree you get away with it. Sometimes you couldn't. And then you come to university and, you know, if you don't have food and you don't make food, you won't have food. So there's a lot more that comes with that. Probably a bit of the ADHD you can kind of go through. I think it's called ADHD paralysis, which is basically when, I don't know, you might need to do something, but your brain's on a bit of a fight or flight. So sometimes, and it sounds like an exaggeration, I could be sat there for about 2 hours just kind of like this, because your brain cannot make the move to the next thing. So I think one of the most challenging parts really is the responsibility that comes with, you know, having to make sure that you have the right clothes for something, that you've got enough money, that you use money responsibly. But obviously with teaching, tying in with that, as much as working with children and working in a school, because it's a passion, is so enjoyable, it's quite daunting at first when you go up to teach your first lesson, because you've got, you know, the children ready to learn and you've got your mentor who's going to be giving you tips. And I remember my first time I kind of walked up and was like, oh, how do I start this? Because it's so new and it's so daunting, and having the responsibility, especially in my 3rd year, I remember it, and it was beautiful, but it was so challenging, you know, waking up to then go to school and teach the whole day. Because on my last placement, how my course ran anyway, is that we would basically teach full time for I think about 4 or 5 weeks. We'd have a bit of a run up, which I really like. You're not just going straight into a school to be then teaching, because it's not really effective and it's not healthy for a human to just go straight in, not knowing at all. But we were teaching for about 4 or 5 weeks completely on our own. Obviously the mentor was around, but that was our class. And I remember my first day I woke up and thought, I've got to actually get up, I've got to make my breakfast, I've got to travel on the bus to placement with all my planning, all my lessons, teach them correctly all day, to then do it for 5 weeks. And I remember being so nervous. And it's so scary because you can't just run back and have your tea made for you. You've got the responsibility. So probably the daunting feeling of having so much responsibility was the scariest part, or the most challenging part. But yet again, I think I really overcame that with being honest. And they're not there, in my opinion anyway, they're not there to trick you. They're not there to kind of trip you up. They want you to pass. They want you to do this. And I think when you have the right mentor and the right school, you flourish. I've had my kind of hard times in placements where, that school might just have not been for me. And I've kind of gone, I don't know how to do this, but every school's different. So if you ever struggle, just don't give up, don't question. But basically, with the responsibility, it's scary, but just being honest. And because you have to remember, you're not actually qualified yet. If you go wrong, or you think, oh no, I didn't do that right, it's not the end of the world. You're there to learn. If you go into the course, know exactly everything, why are you there?
Yeah, exactly. So that's good advice to give, though, that if you are finding it a little bit overwhelming and stuff, just being honest with your school maybe, and just being like, what do you want me to do? How can you help me a little bit of this? I'm feeling a bit anxious or overwhelmed about this whole situation, especially like you said, in your first year or in your third year, even like when you're taking on the, full-time work basically of being a teacher, when you're learning and stuff still. That's so heavy to be like being in control of a class. And like you said, then going home and doing all the normal things that you kind of have to do around life, like that does. Yeah. And also, I suppose when you've got something like ADHD, and you said you can have those moments where you kind of are almost paralyzed by it. Like that must be really hard to kind of then deal with, and then going into school the next day and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you feel that you kind of relax in the evening to kind of maybe help with stuff like that? Is there ways that you can kind of combat that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at first because I'll say in a minute what I do. When I first tried this strategy, I remember thinking, I can't be doing this. I'm letting myself down. I should be able to remember what I'm doing every day. I should be able to do what everybody else is doing and just remember to go and put my tea on, or remember to do this. But what I did at first, although in my head, I remember being very self-sabotaging, being like, well, everyone else doesn't do this. I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, I'm really disappointed in myself. But I literally would plan what I did when I got home. So I don't know, let's say I got home at 5:30. I'd go, right, I'm going to spend half an hour doing marking, and when it hits 6 o'clock, I'm going to leave it. And I would make a to-do list. So it might be go and see my partner, or go to musical theatre. That's been a massive help for me, is having that kind of time to let off some steam and things like that, and having things ready, not just thinking, oh, actually I'll see what I do, because I end up just going, I'm just going to lay in bed and go on my phone, and I don't want to waste my evening. If I need to relax like that, I will, but I don't want to live a life of just going and sitting in bed, because I've got too much energy for it. I've got too much energy to give. So yeah, I kind of overcome and be able to relax by genuinely just going, right, Monday I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go to musical theatre. On Tuesday I'm going to definitely eat my tea first and remember, and then have a pamper night, and then on Friday night I'm going to go out to a restaurant. So I basically planned my way in, and I still do it to this day. Like even today when I was travelling, I went, right, at 8:30 I need to make sure I set an alarm to be able to get here on time, and when I get home I'm going to do some cleaning. And it just means that when I've done that, or when it I don't know, hits 5 o'clock, I go, right, I'm stopping now, and I can relax knowing that I haven't got anything else to do. So that's basically how I do it. It doesn't work for everyone, but if I don't have a list, I just don't remember.
That's so cool that you do that. I feel like that's such like a good way of kind of structuring your evenings, especially when you're trying to kind of set in stuff like activities that you do in the evening, like doing your musical theatre, or like even when you, like you said, like when you need to do your cleaning and stuff like that. me and my friends in like we've got a house share, and we've got a calendar now of what each of us do during the week. So we put it on our fridge, because then you kind of like know what each other are doing as well. You can kind of arrange your like nights in together a little bit more,
like cooking food together. We do that. I'm not a great cook, so one of my housemates always will go, I'll do it, Eleanor. I'm like, give me a chance. He's like, I will cook for us, just let me cook, because I need to learn. I need to improve my cooking abilities. But we do have food together on occasional days, because like you do, we plan it.
Yeah, I think that's nice though. And also there's always time to learn how to cook a little bit, or just
I have
follow
progressed,
recipes.
to be fair. I have progressed since I moved here, so I'm going to see it as a win. There's always time. I've got like 50, 60 years left to be able to get better.
And do you feel like you have had like a favourite part of your course, or something that you feel have like developed your skill set the most within your course?
I would probably say that my 4th year, because what I just love so much about it, as much as we've had a lot of freedom in the 3 years to be able to, you know, expand upon our ideas and contribute and basically tell everyone what we believe our way of teaching is. In the 4th year, it's basically just a lot of who am I as a teacher and what am I going to do about it. So we have a module called curriculum enhancement. So when I get my degree, the best part is it will say integrated masters in education, curriculum enhancement in science, because we had the choice of, you know, one of the core subjects, English, maths or science, being enhanced in it, which is brilliant, because that's a big step up if I go into a job and I go, I'm enhanced in this. So within that, that's one thing that we've done. One of our modules is leadership enhancement. So that's when we basically look at who are we as leaders. Are we a healthy leader? How can we be better with communication? So it's kind of like how we present ourselves and how we go into things, and just something about it. There's just so much conversation about who we are, where we've come from, our experiences. Were we in a healthy environment? Were we not? And what can we do to also protect ourselves in situations so we don't burn out and we still have our own identity and we can still go into places fresh. So really, my favourite part is just being the 4th year, the way that we've been able to not just learn, but to actually bring things back for our lecturers to have, to basically just develop ourselves so much more. As much as these 3 years have been really important for my development, I feel like even in the past couple of months of this year, being on this part of the year, I've just gone like that, because we've just had so much time to reflect. And, you know, because this year we're in 1 or 2 days a week, it just means that we have like the other couple of days to, you know, have a balance of doing our assignments, having enough time, also going into schools and working in schools. So it's just been, you know, the kind of uni that I like. It's a good balance.
Yeah, that's really nice. So that's good that that's been like something you've enjoyed within your course.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that's helped you like develop your skills further? Obviously, with the enhancement that you can kind of get, does that mean that basically you're like specialised in that subject? Is that what it basically means?
Yeah, so we have basically the whole year looking into science, the reasons behind it. As much as a teacher, it's brilliant because you kind of get taught how to approach everything, especially on our course. We did, I think in our 2nd year, we did it was like a round year, and I don't know how to explain that, but we spent like 2 or 3 weeks looking at science and English and maths and etc. But with this year, we really work in depth looking at science, how we approach it. In the placement that we're on, we get the opportunity to basically work with the science lead for like a good couple of weeks to help improve the curriculum within the school. So it just really is giving you things that not everybody doing the course, you know, in other courses anyway, you don't get them opportunities as much. So basically I can go into schools and go, if you need a head of science or curriculum lead for science, like I've got something that will make me stand out from a lot of people.
That's really nice. So it's like kind of helps with your progression in schools, like from the get-go, basically. That's really interesting. And did you have any experience with kids before doing your education degree? And do you feel, if you have had any experience, that that's kind of helped you within your degree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just doing my drama, you kind of work with so many different ages. And then I think I was about 17. I was working at a play centre where they did the birthdays. It was my first proper job, and I was so nervous. It was such an amazing place, so because I had to work everything from greeting the children, because you can imagine you've got the parents which want the best birthday, and you've got the children running about all sweaty with all their like slushies and stuff. But even with that, I'd have to speak to the children. I'd have to, do the whole happy birthday. I have to get in the costumes. So you kind of have to know how to work with children and how to bring out the best. So that was my kind of first experience with that. And then I moved to uni, and I think within the first year, I started working at a holiday club, because I do go home, but I thought I love Derby so much and I love being at uni so much that I actually could just get a job here.
Yeah.
So I started working in a Derby holiday club with kids. Basically it's kind of like a daycare. There is a lot of teaching involved in it, which was, this is where I brought my skills in. I ran a music week, one of the summer holidays. We actually worked with a composer called David Lawrence. Nobody will probably know him, but basically he is like the composer at Young Voices, and I had some contact because it's my friend's dad, which is brilliant.
Oh, amazing.
So I combined all of this and my teaching ability to be able to teach them about music and to make their own song at this holiday club. It was amazing. So I had all this experience there, working with SEND children as well, and that's where I kind of went, I really enjoy this aspect of it, just sitting with that they're so smart, and it's just so beautiful to take the time with them, because it's so hard when there's so many children. Just working with the SEND children and also seeing the other children, going and making friends with them, that was the place where I just really love working with children.
Yeah.
So even little things like playing football with them outside, I'm such a child at heart. I have no shame in kicking a football around with 5-year-olds. I'm so for it. I mean, it snowed recently. I was such a child. I swear to God, people would think I was like 5. I was running about in it. Anyway, so that holiday club was great. And then I kind of just progressed on with that, doing my course and kind of picking up the opportunities as they came. So, the Saturday National Club, and just anything around in the area that was working with children. So it's a good range, I feel, and that's really benefited me when applying for opportunities.
Yeah. And do you feel that kind of helped you when getting, when you went for your interviews and stuff for like Derby and things? Do you feel like that kind of put you in a really good position?
Yeah, for sure, because I think if I didn't have these experiences and kind of reached out, even I know as much as I'm an only child, basically, so it's not I can go, I help with my brother and sister. It's like I wouldn't have had anything to go off. So it's, as much as there's a lot of opportunities, I think I picked the right opportunities to use. I'm very reflective as a person, so I had to think about what's going to benefit me, what is going to be suited to me, and even applying for jobs and starting to apply for jobs after my degree, they've kind of gone, you've got a really beautiful range. So I think my advice to students would be, even if it's just like going and helping at the arts club in your university area, or even reaching out to the university and saying, are there any opportunities working with children, because there's so much more than you realise. I mean, Derby's lucky because they have it's like a careers hub, so you can literally go and sit down with them and say, what opportunities are there any, what can I do? And it's benefited me massively because I have so much to back myself with.
That's so good. And also just good that you came in really prepared, and kind of, I suppose, working with kids in that kind of environment as well, where it's supposed to be like a really fun, birthday environment that you're supposed to be doing when you were kind of working at those places. I feel like that's where you're getting the excitement with kids and things like that. So that's like big time entertainment where they want to be having the best time. So
the pressure though when you're holding that cake, 3-tier cake, and I'm thinking there's children running about. I mean, to be fair, it even gives you that area of pressure. You've got to think about, where are the children? Are they safe? Cleaning? Are there any sharp edges? Can I be lighting this cake right here with when the child's got his face ready to blow it? But I mean, that in itself was just a starting point, and I always will be grateful for that place.
And so in your course, you've done placements and things like that, but you've also been a student representative.
I have, yes. I'm still currently doing that, actually. I only started it a couple of months ago. It just came up as an opportunity, and at the minute, as much as I always have been, I kind of relaxed into things probably about for past 2 years, and then I went this year. Actually, I've got a lot more time on my hands. I am very much I need to get up and do something. I can't just sit for days on end. I have to be doing something. And the opportunity came up and I thought, why not? Because, you know, I just feel like I've progressed so much. There's nothing really, feels like there's nothing stopping me at the minute. It's great. So yeah, I do that.
So what does that exactly entail, like within the master's program?
So it's basically, you know, representing the students. And what I mean by that is talking to people on my course with confidentiality too, and saying, you know, what works well, what doesn't work well. Is there anything that you've struggled with? Because sometimes, you know, when places will say, oh, you know, give us your feedback. I think for students, and I agree, it can be a bit like, I could send a form in, but are you actually going to listen to what I'm saying? So what is the brilliant part about it is that the people on my course know that I'm the representative. If they want to disclose something to me and say, obviously, if it was a safeguarding problem, that's different. Yeah. But in terms of, they might say, I'm just really struggling with how the university or the course, for example, it hasn't happened, but just a random example. I'm struggling with how the university's placed our course this year. This isn't working for me. And I might go, thank you for letting me know. I won't use your name, but I will go and feed that back to the representative, the head representative. And we kind of meet every so often. We disclose what we think will be better. And that in itself is kind of like it goes from one place to another. So then that will be passed to the union. And then the union will basically look long term and go, okay, so quite a lot of people have said that this isn't working. We need to do something about it. But basically as well, just even if, for example, that one student might have said, I actually think that this might be a good idea, I would then say, I'm going to recommend that, can we do this? So it's not just about giving the feedback, it's saying, hey, actually, we've had a perspective from our course about this. Yeah. Could you think about it? 'Cause, I mean, everybody's different. You know, one person deciding everything won't do it. You have to think about everybody's backgrounds and cultures and lifestyles. And it's very rewarding because people feel comfortable coming to me to talk about things.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah. And I suppose as well that will kind of help, I assume it will help kind of in your approach when you are teaching, because you would have had kind of an insight into kind of what people are struggling with maybe a little bit more, even at university level, you know. So that's good. Do you think that that's something that you're wanting to progress further in as you kind of graduate? Like, is that something you maybe want to look into, helping with curriculums and things?
Absolutely. I mean, I've only just, to be fair, I'm only realising this. I'm having like a moment when you say this. Definitely in the past year or so, I've taken on a lot more representative roles, like, you know, for here representing, you know, teaching and getting to teaching and my course, and you know, I work as well in social media. So you know, I am managing some like social media accounts as a part-time job, and it's, you know, the more I do this, I realize actually I really enjoy being able to advocate for people and get it across, because as someone, as much as it's one aspect of my life, as much as, you know, I have a condition, it's important, I've realised, to just speak up about things. So it's important that I want to be that voice for places too. So definitely, for sure, if things come up in the future, I'll be like, that
yeah. No, that's so nice. And so what made you kind of want to do that? Like, what made you want to be a student representative?
I think really just hearing about how people, you know, just as a general, saying, oh, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, or can we change this? But them not having the confidence to be able to speak out about it or know who to go to. And it was actually one of our lecturers that kind of picked up on this and was like, you know, we're going to start doing student representatives because we trust you all. We know that we are trying our best to give you the right opportunities, but you know, we want to have someone who everybody can go to. And it's quite funny actually, because I remember when I first started university, I was quite quiet. I think I'm like that a lot, is I'm quite quiet at first, and then the more comfortable I feel, the more that I kind of come out like I'm just mad with my close friends. You wouldn't recognise me, I'm crazy. But I kind of progressed over the years. And then in my fourth year, because it's a little bit smaller, because people have, you know, graduated in their third year, the opportunity was offered to us, and I just thought, why not? I like a good challenge. So that was the main reason, is that, you know, there are a lot of good people on our course who would be representatives, but I just hear it so much, even from close friends saying, I don't know who to speak to or do this? And I'll go, well, go to someone who might be a representative. And I'm like, oh, well, I could do that maybe for you. Not for you in particular, but just as a general. Yeah. So it's just because it got offered. But also, I feel like I'm quite good at advice and speaking out for people.
Yeah, that's nice. And that's nice that the opportunity came up as well. That it's something that you could kind of, take with both hands. I feel like you sound like you're really good at it. So that's amazing. And what do you find is something that you're passionate about within education? Obviously, you've kind of touched on being that advocate for different students that maybe have different needs and things like that. Is that something that you feel is like a big passion of yours?
Very much so. I think especially looking at neurodiversity is something, especially even in the news, it's so big right now about being advocating SEND and what children in this area kind of need. And I think especially at the minute, I'm really focusing on the way that we can put things in place for children, for them to feel more regulated and feel more safe to express their emotions. I mean, I'm doing a lot of work on my course around emotional literacy, but also play-based learning. And that probably goes a lot towards SEND students who might need more scaffolding for that regulation. But I think as a general, I think play-based learning, as a side note, is just so important to help children just feel grounded, ready to learn. So I think at the minute, really, what I'm very, very passionate about is just being able to see what children needs first. What are their needs? Do they need more practical time? Looking at how things are structured, not just being able to say, oh, I'm a teacher and I teach, actually being able to help curriculum and help schools change and think about, well, actually, there's not a lot of this going on. Is this what your children need? How can we implement that to be able to see children kind of coming out their shell more, or being able to grow in confidence, and looking at even little things that might go on, such as in one of my placements, I've been running kind of like an intervention to help with like emotional resilience and literacy, and giving children what they need to be able to help themselves in class, or even SEND children, looking at how we can help them identify their emotions. So I've been doing that, and it's just so rewarding. And I think the more I go on, I'm really very passionate about it. Sometimes too passionate. I can get in a good debate about it, about what we need.
I think that's great that you're passionate about it, and that there's like something that you feel that about within teaching. That's great to go in as a teacher that has a passion for things like that. I think to be an advocate for a lot of students that may need a little bit more help, or that they just want to learn in a different way and things like that. Because sometimes it's just explaining something in a slightly different way, or taking a bit more time with the student. So do you think that maybe SEND schools are something that you're interested in going into as a teacher? Yeah. Or would you what's your idea of your ideal school to go into when you graduate?
Yeah, I agree that, SEND schools or specialist schools, or I think it's alternative schools, or there's a name around it where it's basically specialized for, it's not mainstream, it's usually a school where it's just purely them children who might need a little bit of extra support. It doesn't mean that they're any weaker or they learn any slower. They just have additional needs, but they still have just as many strengths as someone in a mainstream school, which this is why it's really close to my heart. And just because of the nature of the course, we haven't been able to do really any placements that are specifically SEND. So kind of my goals in the next couple of months, or even as my first job, is to be able to work in a specialist school or a SEND school. And it's definitely something that I've grown more fond of. I've had a lot of professionals and also my friends going, I think you'd really like working in that, because as much as you're great in mainstream, you seem to be so passionate about it. And because you technically did grow up as a neurodivergent whose needs weren't met, being able to give children that opportunity and be on their page, you would really thrive in there. So I do agree. I'd love to see myself in a year in a school like that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I know my sister's worked in some SEND schools and things, and I think she really enjoyed it. I think if you're the type of person as well that is a good listener and, we'll take that extra time with the students, and we'll kind of sit with them and take the time to help them understand in a different way, because that's all it is really, is that they're just learning in a slightly different way, which I think is, if you're really good at that and you kind of have that baseline understanding as well, because like you said, you grew up kind of neurodivergent without that extra help that you needed, like you have a like an amazing level of understanding of that.
Like, I truly believe that whatever the situation is, whatever a child says, whatever happens, there's always a reason behind something. I don't, in my opinion, I don't believe people that go, they just did that because, you know, why not? I think every student from SEN to neurotypical, there's always a reason behind action. And I think what, you know, when you really know a student well, and, you know, it will take time. Even any child, no matter where they are or where they come from or who they are as a person with additional needs, you have to really get to know the child on any level, to be fair, all levels, because when you know them and you just listen, you'll figure that there's always something behind their actions, even if it's throwing or going non-verbal or not being able to talk. I will never ever dismiss that, because there's clearly, they might need some space and there's always a reason. So you just got to listen.
Yeah. And it's the backgrounds, like people's backgrounds, where they're coming from, you know, what might be going on at home, like you said before, you know, it could happen at any time. So yeah, that's really great takeaway really from your experience. And what do you see, I suppose we've kind of already touched on this, but obviously what do you see yourself kind of doing when you graduate? Is it just that you want to go straight into schools? Do you think you'll do anything after, like give yourself a little bit of a break, or do you think you won't do that?
I feel like, weirdly, as much as I'm on my 4th year, I feel like this is like my break point, because it's just very much self-led. I'm obviously doing all my assignments. I've got my dissertation this year, but I, you know, to say I have got ADHD, I shouldn't really put that label on me, but I am actually extremely organised. I cannot go out not being organised, which, you know, is a contradiction to what people think, is that we can't, you know, very unorganised and messy and everything, but you should see my room, or how I'm like. I'm very strict with my routines and how I look, but, and now I've forgotten what I'm saying. I'm saying that where I see myself in terms of that is this year is kind of my, in a way, break year, because it's very self-led. I'm kind of finding my own route. I have the choice to not be in a job currently, but I am just doing social media, which is fun, a bit of a side thing. So I feel like when I graduate, I will probably, you know, get straight into a job, not setting myself too high of an expectation, because, you know, I'm all, you know, everyone's always going to be learning. So I think that, you know, I'll probably take it slow. Even if there's something part-time, you know, I would take that, but, you know, you've got to think about rent. It's a shame. It's a shame. You've got to think about bills. So, I mean, preferably full-time, but I'm very much about boundaries. I don't overdo it if I don't have to. So I've, you know, got to consider that. But I do think that I will lean towards SEND specialist schools. You know, you just kind of, you're so excited about something, it's like you just can't look back. I'm like, I just want to get into it and see. And I always know that I've got my other skills and work in mainstream school and just anything in education, I've got it there. But I think like SEND specialist schools are kind of where I can see myself going.
Yeah, I honestly think you'll thrive there. You'd be amazing. So just as a final kind of round off question, what would be some advice that you'd maybe give for someone that maybe is finishing their degree in education, or is maybe just like interested in going into education as a study, or maybe is interested in doing an integrated master's? Like, from your experience, what would be a bit of advice that you'd give for someone?
I really think, and it sounds very, very broad and basic, but being yourself will actually give you so many more opportunities. And I think what I mean by that is, if you might say, oh, well, I'm not very good at speaking to people, I can't speak out loud, but then you're forgetting the part that you might be absolutely amazing at, let's say, PE. You might be in spare time, you might do football. You probably don't realise how much that actually will benefit, because, I don't know, I know so many places that are screaming out for PE teachers. So don't try and fit into the box that you think teaching is. Don't think you have to walk in every day with your briefcase or in your nice dress and think, okay, well, I can't do that though, because I'm like this. Most likely you will have some skills or things that will make you stand out, like, let's say, my music, or, you know, my neurodivergency. That's something that actually helps me so much, which 3 or 4 years ago I would have gone, oh, I can't do this now because I've got ADHD, or, you know, oh, well, why would I need my music? I'm teaching. It will benefit you so much. So, you know, making that clear about what you can bring to teaching, and that will benefit you, and just, you know, soak up the experiences and just really just be honest about what you can and can't do. Don't think you have to be at the same level, like I say, fitting again yet into that box. So just being yourself, and just giving things a go and bringing what you can to the table, whilst holding your own boundaries will just kind of, in my opinion anyway, give you a really well-rounded experience.
That's amazing. And I think it's so inspiring as well that you've kind of, you've taken stuff with your ADHD, you've taken it in your stride, you've turned it into such a strength. And I think that would be like inspiring for people watching as well, that maybe have ADHD as well, or are anxious about going into this kind of course, or, starting university and are a bit apprehensive,
It's just the energy that I have, in my opinion. It's
Yeah,
like, I feel
brilliant.
like I'm one of the kids. I'm like, I remember actually on my my last placement, one of the teachers was like, well, if you go out to break, they're playing football, and she said, just don't get too involved because you'll end up getting roped into running about. I don't care. So then it got to the end of the break, and I remember she came out, and I was just there running with the kids playing football, and she went, I don't know where you get the energy from. I said, it's the ADHD, I tell you now. That's my strength. They love me, and they wouldn't leave me alone. I remember at dinner, they'd been kind of knocking on the window going, football's going. Oh no, but yeah, I think there's so much good in it. There's, as much as it can be hard, it's, I'm very much, when I first got diagnosed, I kind of invalidate that and be like, oh no, I can't say the bad. It's challenging. If I didn't feel challenged, technically there wouldn't be something that I would have recognised as ADHD. It can be hard, but I think the more I've learned about it, there's so many pros to it. I wouldn't change it,
Yeah.
So yeah,
there's so many strengths that you can get from it as well. Like, it's just, it's part of you, and that's like amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I had such a nice time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation, and I think a lot of people will learn a lot from what you were saying. And love hearing all about your story and how you got into, learning to get into teaching and stuff like that. That's amazing. Okay, so thank you guys for listening to another episode of our podcast. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you again soon.